I know you guys are learning some fantastic things in those classes. Can we get a round of applause for all of our teachers because they're awesome. And in a certain way, I don't even know why I'm in front of you guys because I'm in the presence of greatness right now. All of you probably have something to teach me. But I'm going to share a little bit, some things that you've heard already, but maybe from a different angle. It's amazing how many nuggets of wisdom have kind of crossed over from one person to another that are all kind of united. So I'm Keisha Graziadei-Shup. Some of y'all are like, I thought she was going to be black. But I'm not surprised. How many of you guys, you ladies out there, have read a book or watched a movie that has totally rocked your world and inspired you? And how many feel like you wasted your time? You're like, I want that 2 hours back because that was a horrible movie. People love stories, don't we? We love reading stories. We love writing stories. I do, especially because I'm a writer. We love watching stories, listening to stories, and most of all, we love being part of stories. And so that's kind of what I want to talk about. Maybe you realize this and maybe you don't, but every one of us, every day, acts out a narrative of some sort. We're not always aware of it. If you're one of those awesome people, and there might be some of you in here, I know it ain't me, that have it all together so well that you're already leading like that most inspirational life you possibly could. But if you're anything like me, you might sometimes feel a little overwhelmed, confused, at times purposeless, uncertain, maybe disordered. Things are a little chaotic. You can't figure things out. Not sure if you're on the right track. If I can be real with you, I know there are some moments in my life where if I was the main character in that book, I'd probably stuck that one back on the shelf like this ain't going anywhere. So I'm calling this talk Living Stories because I believe that with true freedom, we really can live the lives that we want to live and be free to live the story that we want. That idea, I think, at the same time, is really exciting and really terrifying because too many choices, too many options is really overwhelming, like the menus at Cheesecake Factory. Has anyone ever been there? It's like a book. I'm like, take me to Chipotle, please. I think that's why St. Augustine said that freedom comes wrapped in the gift, actually you can go back to the slides you were before, comes wrapped in the gift of constraint. Either by circumstances outside of our control or due to our own priorities. For example, when I graduated from college, I fell in love, so I wanted to get married. But I also wanted like a dream job, right? And I probably could have found a pretty awesome job right away if I could just up and move to a big city somewhere. And so I was faced with a choice, and I chose family, so I stayed. And so that eliminated the other option, right? So our freedom, in order to be free in the one thing, it closes the door on another thing. So freedom coexists with constraint. And also, the economy was just, let's be honest, horrible at that time, especially in Roanoke when I graduated in 2009, and that put a constraint on my opportunities as well. I reached out to some philosopher friends. I'm kind of a philosophy junkie, and asked some people what they thought freedom meant. What does that word actually mean? And one of my friends said that freedom comes being truly free depends on a person's ability to imagine possibilities. And I thought, well, that's really something worth thinking about. That's the next slide, by the way. So after college, as I was saying, there were some constraints around finding a job that I really wanted, and after a year and a half of waiting tables and babysitting, hey, you do what you gotta do. And there's nothing wrong with waiting tables or babysitting, but it just wasn't what I had in mind. My friend Elizabeth, the past connection, got me a temporary front desk job at the organization where she was working. And I was hopeful, it was temporary, but I was hopeful, maybe it would turn into something full-time. And it At that moment, they laid me off, and that was it. I was ready to move along, and I was distraught. I had big bills to pay, including my student loan debt, like somebody said earlier, like our education sometimes can like constrain us a little bit, right? You have to pay back that debt. And my degree didn't seem to be helping me at the moment, and that was extra frustrating. But Elizabeth pulled me aside that day when I was laid off, and she about blew my mind. It was like she opened Pandora's box right in front of my face, and I don't think it was a small thing. I don't think she realized what was going to happen in my mind. She told me, "You have skills that this company needs. Why are you leaving so easily?" I was like, that's a funny thing to say. I just got laid off. Do I have another choice? She saw something that I didn't see. Now, first of all, there's two things here. First of all, she reminded me of my value at a time that I was really doubting myself. And so maybe there's a handful of you in this room that need to hear that you're valuable and you have something uniquely valuable to offer the world. And you probably have people telling you what those things are, and maybe you need to listen. Maybe you actually have to believe them, and maybe that will lead you in the way you need to go. Second of all, she said, you need to write up a proposal to offer some marketing jobs to do, because that's what I wanted to do is marketing, to do on a part-time, like a project basis, and just pitch it to management and see what they say. I was like, you can do that? So I did exactly what she told me to do. She taught me, and I did it. And by the end of the 3-month trial period, they accepted it. The marketing director was pleading with the CEO to hire me on full-time. And so I did it. And then the organization started an international division in Africa. And I was like, you know what? I can do my job better if I'm in Africa. It was true, but I also really wanted to go to Africa. So I sat down with my boss, and I was like, look, I can do my job better in Africa. You should send me. And they sent me, and my husband. And so I worked from a base in Uganda for a while. Eventually, I got laid off. Nonprofit work sometimes goes that way. And I found myself unemployed for 5 months, applying to jobs the good old-fashioned way. And I was like, at a certain point, I was like, Keisha, you've done this before. It doesn't work. At least it didn't work for me. And so what did I do? I went ahead and got together with a friend who was launching a translation and tutoring firm, and I said, let me help you do that. So we co-launched it together. And while I was doing that, I discovered that there was this huge disconnect in the Roanoke community. You start learning things, right? Between immigrants and American nationals. And so I launched I was like, I'm a writer, I'm bilingual, so I launched a Spanish-English community news website, and I did that for a couple of years. And during that process, I discovered that there's a huge shortage of leadership in our community for people to problem solve like this. And so I was invited to do all of the boards and all of the committees, nonprofit boards, government committees, and I did a lot of them. What I was learning along the way here is that when you imagine new possibilities, there's so many possibilities. And you can ask for the things that you want. And the scariest thing is that someone might say no. Not so scary. So even though the leadership opportunities were numerous and I was making tons of connections that I never thought I would be able to make, getting invited to private governor parties with the governor and that sort of thing, I was getting burned out. And all along, and these aren't inherently lucrative opportunities either, so I had to make money still. So I was doing promotional marketing events on the side. I still do whiskey tastings to this day, 7 years later, and if that sounds fun to you, like great whiskey, come talk to me after. So now, I needed to revisit, what are my goals now? I've learned a lot. Where am I going now? I wanted to revisit higher education. And I also wanted to have a baby. That's her. Aww. Some of you saw her today. She's a hot mess. And so I'm a seminary student. I've kind of taken a break, but that's what I'm doing long term. And since we're meeting at a church today and I'm talking about stories, it might be fitting to interject something really quick. As the Bible is a piece of literature, this is something I learned recently. Because the Bible is like more like a library of books, and in a lot of those books are like a ton of stories, and but it's one book composed of all of these smaller stories, and they're all, the reason why it's all combined is because they all work together as like this great redemptive narrative. There's really not any other literature in the world like it. And I feel like people are like that. Aren't we like a collection of all of these experiences? Sometimes they don't seem to connect or make any sense one next to the other. But it's part of the formation of your great narrative. And that's something worth pondering and thinking about too. And I've officially launched a new business, figuring out this mom and career thing. How do I keep doing what I love and also raise my child? And so I started Grazia Strategic to offer writing and marketing services. And this is a new plot point for my narrative in terms of my work, because I want to help businesses tell their unique stories. But why am I telling you this about me? I'll tell you what it's not about. It's not because I think you should act out my story or anyone's story that's been up here on the stage. I'm hoping to illustrate some principles that you can hopefully apply in your own way. This is an important distinction to make because you might think that some people are living these awesome lives that are better than yours and you feel intimidated by that. That's them, not you. You are you. That's an external constraint that you're not somebody else, like I was talking about earlier. And that is not only okay, that's good. There's no other person better fit for your job than you, because you're you. You have your own story to act out, and it's not going to look like everyone else does. And if you watch American Idol, you know there's some people out there who think they're good at something, and they're just not. Right? It's like, I hate to be the bearer of bad news. It's good when we're honest about the things that we're good at doing and what we're not good at doing. And you know, if you're honest with yourself, you know the things that you're good at. Focusing on that really maximizes your opportunity to succeed. That's been my experience. There's always something you can learn from others, that's true. You can add that to your story. There are always some character traits that you can adapt to build your own character in your story. There are always some plot points that would spice things up or reinvigorate you. That's worth thinking about. The good news is that you're free to imagine new possibilities and also appreciate the constraints. It's the balance of those two things that make your story yours. And some possibilities might be a little uncomfortable or unfamiliar, but trying new things is exactly what you need to do sometimes to figure out what you do and don't want. And once you know what you want, maybe you can ask for what you want. And maybe the possibilities would be better than you ever imagined.